Okay, here's part two.
It was the 12th day of their 21-day shoot.
That day, I did exactly what I've done every day on that movie.
Baldwin was preparing for his next scene, a shootout inside this wooden church.
Right.
Set the scene right before that happened. You're sitting in a pew in the church.
Right.
What's the scene supposed to be?
The scene is the two guys are there who have got me, cornered, and they think I'm shot pretty bad, and I'm kind of wilting, and they have a gun, and the sound outside distracts them, and I then draw the gun, cross-draw out of my holster, pull the gun up like that, and start to cock the pistol, cut. I'm handed a gun, and someone declares, they said, "This is a cold gun."
Dave Halls?
The first AD. In my years on the sets of film, hot gun meant that there was a charge in there, and cold gun meant there was nothing in there. When he's saying this is a cold gun, what he's saying to everybody on the set is, you can relax. The gun is empty.
Now, there's been reports and some people on movies that said they don't use the term cold gun. This is a made-up term that people have never heard. I don't know if that's true or not.
That's what cold gun means.
Well, cold gun means there's no charge in there. There could be dummy rounds.
A dummy round looks like a real bullet, but is completely inert. It contains no explosive charge.
And you were rehearsing that scene. Was it an actual rehearsal? There's some disagreement about that, whether it was a formal rehearsal at that time.
This is a marking rehearsal where I'm going to show her. She's standing next to the camera. She's like this. You're me. She's got a monitor here. The camera is here filming that way. She takes a monitor that is his monitor, the operator, and turns it toward her. It swivels, and she says to me, "Hold the gun lower. Go to your right. Okay, right there. All right, do that. Now show it a little bit lower." And she's getting me to position the gun. Everything is in her direction. She's guiding me through how she wants me to hold the gun for this angle. And I draw the gun out, and I find a mark. I draw the gun out, I find a cut. And what's really urgent is the gun wasn't meant to be fired in that angle.
So if you're shooting directly into the camera lens, you're not aiming?
I'm not shooting into the camera lens. I'm shooting just off.
Just off?
Right, in her direction. I'm holding the gun where she told me to hold it, which ended up being aimed right in below her armpit, was what I was told. I don't know. This was a completely incidental shot, an angle that may not have ended up in the film at all. But we kept doing this, and so then I said to her, "Now in this scene, I'm going to cock the gun." And I said, "Do you want to see that?" And she said, "Yes." So I take the gun, and I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger.
So it wasn't in her direction. You asked to cock the gun. That's different. He's saying it was all in her direction. That's not true. He asked.
I said, "Do you see that?" She goes, "Well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that." And I cock the gun. I go, "Can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that?" And she says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun, and the gun goes off.
Okay, so that's not the way guns work. He's using a single action gun, and maybe I'll splice in when I go show you what a single action gun is here, but that's not the way the single action gun works. It's a single action, which means you have to cock the hammer in order to pull the trigger. Let me make sure this is empty again, just to make sure, because I'm showing you and I wasn't really checking. All right, so it's empty. So I need to cock the hammer and then pull the trigger in order for the gun to fire. There's also a thing called a half-cock safety. If I bring it here, most people carry their guns like this. So if you drop it, this little point right here, which is the firing pin, won't hit the bullet primer, which is the thing in the center there, and when it hits that, it'll make the bullet fire. So, in order to stop this from doing this, they have what's called a half-cock safety. Right there. Even if you pull the trigger, it will not go. The gun will not fire unless it is fully cocked. And then you can push the trigger and it will fire. So half cock says no fire. I don't care if he pulls the trigger or not, he's not firing it. So his excuse that I pulled the hammer back and let it go is impossible. He may be able to do this and not cock it, but once it locks to the rear, the only way to get this hammer to go forward is to pull this trigger. Now, riding the trigger forward.
I let go of the hammer of the gun goes off.
At the moment, the decisive
That was the moment the gun went off, yeah.
Okay, so there's a thing that's called a block the hammer if the trigger isn't pulled. And then there's also, if you hold the trigger back, you can fan these guns. And I'll explain that in the little slide in I put in here.
Now, a thing called fanning with these guns, which is why they were popular and why they have a long handle back here that you can fan it, is if I pull the trigger and keep the trigger pulled, I can fire multiple rounds by going bang, bang. And I never have to let go of the trigger.
That was the moment the gun went off.
It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No.
I don't believe that at all. It's almost impossible to do that. These guns have what's called a half cock. And when you half cock it, it locks when you pull it back. So it can't go forward. And if you let it go forward before the half cock, there's not enough spring tension to do it anyway. So what he's describing is not the way things work.
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never. Never. That was the training that I had. You don't point a gun at me and pull the trigger. On day one...
Notice he's squeezing his whole hand. He doesn't know what even a trigger finger is. Watch how he demonstrates squeezing a trigger. He squeezes his whole hand.
Never. That was the training that I had. You don't point a gun at me and pull the trigger.
Squeezing his whole hand. This guy's a freaking idiot when it comes to guns. Well, Rick, guns are dangerous and nobody should... Shut up, you freaking little crybaby left-wing gun.
On day one of my instruction in this business, people said to me, never take a gun and go click, 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 because even though it's incremental, you damage the firing pin on the gun if you do that. Don't do that.
That's not necessarily true either. That depends on the gun. Some guns you can dry fire, sometimes you can't. 22s, normally because of rimfire, you don't want to dry fire because you can damage and it flattens the firing pin out. On regular guns, doesn't hurt it at all.
And Hall's attorney told ABC News that he was watching and agrees that Alec did not pull the trigger and that his finger was outside the trigger guard.
Yeah, that's pretty hard to believe that his finger was outside the trigger guard. But I'll try it when I pull out my little single-action Colt 45.
So you have this Colt 45, you just pulled...
The hammer as far back as I could without cocking the actual...
And you're holding onto the hammer.
I'm holding that. I'm just showing. I go, how about that? Does that work? You see that? Do you see that? She goes, yeah, that's good. I let go of the hammer. Bang, the gun goes off. Well, everyone is horrified. They're shocked. It's loud. They don't have their earplugs in. No one was... The gun was supposed to be empty. I was told I was handed an empty gun. If there were cosmetic rounds, nothing with a charge at all. A flash round, nothing. She goes down.
You would think somebody, either her looking in the camera or someone else, would see bullets in a cylinder. And, I mean, it's pretty easy to tell when a gun has bullets in it and when it doesn't. I'll slide in a picture.
I thought to myself, did she faint? The notion that there was a live round in that gun did not dawn on me till probably 45 minutes to an hour later.
45 minutes to an hour.
Well, she's laying there and I go, did she get hit by wadding? Was there a blank? Sometimes those blank rounds have a wadding inside that packs, it's like a cloth that packs the gunpowder. And sometimes wadding comes out and can hit people and it can feel like a little bit of a poke. But no one could understand, did she have a heart attack? Because remember, the idea that someone put a live bullet in the gun was not even in reality.
Did you go up to her? Or did you back away?
I went up to her and then we were immediately told to get out of the building. We were forced to get out of the building. The medics came in. I mean, I stood over her for 60 seconds and she just lay there kind of in shock.
Was she
That's a long time, 60 seconds.
conscious?
My recollection is yes.
911, what's the
Notice I threw in that my recollection. That is legal lawyer talk. Lawyer talk.
location of your emergency?
We need an ambulance out at Bonanza Creek Ranch right now. We've had 2 people shot on a movie set accidentally.
I'll connect you with medical dispatcher. Don't hang up.
Director Joel Souza is also wounded. His shoulder hit by the same bullet that traveled through Helena.
When she went down, he went down and he was screaming really loudly. And I thought, what is he screaming? What happened?
So was it loaded with a real bullet or one?
I cannot tell you that.
Okay.
We have 2 injuries from a movie gun shot.
Okay. We're getting them out there already. Just stay on the phone with me.
Thank you.
Within
Never stay on the phone on 911, but never mind.
15 minutes or 20 minutes after that, the police arrived and took the church set and put the crime tape around it, the yellow tape, and forced us all to the perimeters of the parking area where we sat and waited. She was in the church, and she was not taken out of the church for quite a while.
In the aftermath, there was chaos and confusion.
But nobody told you what happened?
No.
Did you know-
It wasn't until I was in the police station. Hours later, I mean, it was like seeing aliens. It was utter disbelief over the idea. It was unacceptable, the idea that it was a live round. And finally, one of the police officers, at the conclusion of my interview, I was there for like an hour and a half or so, she takes her phone and she slides it across to me. She says, "That's what came out of Joel's shoulder, a .45 caliber slug. It was a real bullet."
Had you known that Joel had been hit?
No one had any idea until that police officer, that sheriff's officer, said to me, "This is the slug, .45 caliber slug they took out of Joel's arm." And then the kind of insanity-inducing agony of thinking that someone put a live bullet in the gun.
Now that can be corroborated because he got on the phone and he was calling people. So who he called and who he talked to and that he said he just shot somebody really makes a difference. Those statements are really critical on whether or not he's telling the truth or he's full of shit.
Tonight, breaking news.
A fatal shooting on the set of Alec Baldwin's new movie in New Mexico.
Something went horribly wrong here in Santa Fe.
We've all seen that picture of you.
So is this before the cops told him that she was dead? Because he's acting like we were just waiting around. We didn't know anything. Why is he so emotional if he didn't know anything?
You off the set in that hour or so after the gun went off. What were you doing? What was going through your mind?
At the end of, she was laying there, and she was there for a while. I was amazed at how long they didn't get her in a car and get her out, but they waited and a helicopter came. And by the time the helicopter took off with her and literally lifted off, we were all glued to that process outside. When she finally left, I don't know how long it was she was there, 30 minutes, 40 minutes? It seemed like a very long time. But they kept saying, "Oh, she's stable." Like nobody, just as you disbelieved that there was a live round in the gun, you disbelieved that this was going to be a fatal accident.
So you didn't know exactly how serious it was?
At the very end of my interview with the sheriff's department, they said to me, "We regret to tell you that she didn't make it, she died." They told me right then and there. And that's when I went in the parking lot and called my wife to talk to my wife.
Shock and grief. Helena's husband, Matthew, posted a tribute to Helena.
When this happened, her husband comes to town. Her husband, Matthew. And I met with him and their son. And he was as kind as you could be.
You don't want to say nothing against him because his lawsuits are coming. So you definitely want to stay on this guy's good side.
What can you possibly say to him?
I didn't know what to say. He hugged me and he goes, I suppose you and I are going to go through this together, he said. And I thought, well, not as much as you are, And his little boy is there who's 9 years old. I have 6 kids now. I have my older daughter, Ireland, but of the 6 kids that Eli had.
Is that the one you called a slut and said you wish she was dead? Is that the older daughter? I can't remember.
And my oldest is 8. I have a 9-month-old baby. And I think to myself, this little boy doesn't have a mother anymore. And I know that in my life, I'm with my kids, and I'm doing quite well with my kids. My kids and I are having a great time, right until my wife walks in the room, and then I become invisible. My kids all go and they jump on top of their mother. And this boy doesn't have a mother anymore. And there's nothing we can do to bring her back.
Well, you could have been more careful and know the dangers of weapons and checked it yourself instead of listening to someone.
And I told him, I said, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to convey to you how sorry I am and how I'm willing to do anything I can to cooperate.
In the aftermath of the shooting, a torrent of criticism.
The first thing you do when you pick up that gun is you make sure that it's never pointed at anybody.
He should have known that an AD handing you a gun and saying it's cold isn't the same as several people showing you an empty gun.
If I were holding that gun, I would have checked it, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm. People said to me, I got countless people online saying, you idiot, you never point a gun at someone. Well, unless you're told it's empty, and it's the director of photography who's instructing you on the angle for a shot we're going to do.
Now, I will give him some slack here. He was on a set, and he was following directions from her for a camera shot. That I'm okay with. The fact that he chose not to check the gun before he handled it, drew it, and messed with it, that's on him, and he can't blame anybody.
And she and I had this thing in common where we both thought it was empty, and...
Well, she's an idiot too. Rick, she's dead. You can't call her an idiot. Well, I just did. If you point a gun at me, I want to know it's empty. I don't care if we're on a movie set or not. I want to see that the gun's empty. So, it's a day that two idiots met and one of them died.
It wasn't. And that's not her responsibility. That's not my responsibility.
Wow, it's not your responsibility. Man, nice dodge. Maybe it's the gun manufacturer. Maybe it's the bullet manufacturer. Maybe it's the oil that they used on the gun manufacturer that did it. Maybe it's the person that sold the gun to the movies. Yeah, that's it. Get out of here, you freaking weasel.
Whose responsibility remains to be seen. But
Well, there are some who say you're never supposed to point a gun at anyone on a set, no matter what.
Unless the person is the cinematographer who's directing me where to point the gun for her camera angle. That's exactly what happened. That day, I did exactly what I've done every day on that movie.
Which is what?
Which is that there's an armorer there, and that word is new to me. In the years I've been in this
What did
business,
you call it?
It was a prop guy or woman. And the prop person would come, and sometimes they would insist on demonstrating for you and the camera crew. They take the gun, if it was a contemporary gun, they show you the chamber, they show you the clip, they say, the gun is cold. And you look at it and go, thank you. And in the...
Right there, he just said that's standard operating procedure. Why was it different? Why didn't he do it here? Why didn't he question it? He just kind of hung himself out there. That's going to be great in a deposition.
40 years.
Sometimes that would happen. Not all the time.
Well, but no, sometimes they wouldn't demonstrate to me. Some insisted on demonstrating. They would do the demonstration.
Those were the good ones, you big dummy. Those are the ones that you didn't hire that had blue and purple hair because you wanted to be cool.
For everybody there right before we rolled the camera or rehearsed. Then there were others who they didn't do that because I trusted them to do the job. And again, this is not just me pointing a gun at somebody else, people pointing guns at me. I've gotten shot and killed in films before where people had to shoot a flash round at me, and I trusted them to do their job. And in the 40 years I've been in this business, all the way up until that day, I never had a problem.
How many times do you think you handled a gun in those 40 years?
Oh, God, I don't know. What amazes me is how many rounds of bullets do you believe have been fired on the sets of movies and TV shows in the last 75 years?
No.
Oh, I bet you he's got a number.
No idea.
Right. It couldn't even be above 1 billion. You've had hundreds and hundreds of millions of bullets fired on the sets of films and TV shows, and 4 or 5 people were killed. Now, those deaths are tragic and abhorrent. And believe me, I would do anything in my power. I would do anything in my power to undo what was done. I don't know how that bullet arrived in that gun. I don't know. But I'm all for doing anything that will take us to a place where this is less likely to happen again.
Every single time I'm handed a gun on a set, every time, Mark, they hand me a gun, I look at it, I open it, I show it to the person I'm pointing it to, we show it to the crew. Every single take, you hand it back to the armor when you're done, you do it again. Right. Everyone does it. Everybody knows it.
How do you respond to actors like George Clooney who say that every time they were handed a gun, they checked it themselves?
Well, there were a lot of people who felt it necessary to contribute some comment to the situation, which really didn't help the situation.
Oh, of course not. When you're calling Trump an idiot and you're contributing political advice and supporting and calling right-wingers, that has a lot of help to people. But you're allowed to do that, right? The left always wants to be able to do what they want to do, but no one else is allowed to do it against them.
At all. You have if your protocol is you check the gun every time, well, good for you. Good for you. You know what I mean? I probably handled weapons as much as any other actor in films.
Yeah, but not every other actor killed somebody, you big dummy.
With an average career. Again, shooting or being shot by someone. And in that time, I had a protocol, and it never let me down.
Why did you choose?
Actually, in that clip right there, he had his wrong damn trigger finger on the trigger. Was it just me? Hang on. he's got his middle finger for the trigger. What a freaking idiot. This guy shouldn't be handling freaking a set of rubber bands and freaking popsicle sticks to make a slingshot. What the? Are you kidding me? Really?
I had a protocol, and it never let me down.
Now, in this video, it looks like his finger's there.
Why did you choose in your 40 years not to check the gun yourself?
What I was taught by someone years ago was, as I said, if I took a gun and I popped a clip out of a gun or I manipulated the chamber of a gun, they would take the gun away from me and redo it. The prop person said, don't do that, when I was young. And they'd say, one thing you would need to understand is we don't want the actor to be the last line of defense against a catastrophic breach of safety with the gun. My job, they told me, man or woman, my job is to make sure the gun is safe, and then I hand you the gun and I declare the gun.
I kind of believe that sounds probably true. I would agree with that, what he's saying here. Although I think he's full of shit on most shit he's saying, I kind of believe what he's saying here.
Gun safe. The crew's not relying on you to say that it's safe. They're relying on me to say that it's safe.
But any gun person absolutely knows that when you hand a gun to somebody, they have to check it and make sure it's safe or not safe. That is any gun, anywhere, anytime, any range, any police department, any military organization, you name it, you are responsible for any gun in your hand to know if it's safe or if it's not safe. And to keep it in a safe direction and to keep your damn booger hook off the damn bang bang switch.
Person who was charged with that job handed me the weapon. I trusted them, and I never had a problem.
And this
until now that somebody's dead. Now there's a problem.
was from the beginning of your career.
From day one, there's one person that's supposed to make sure that what is in the gun is right and that what's wrong is not in the gun. One person has that responsibility to maintain the gun. And
what is the actor's responsibility?
I guess that's a tough question because the actor.
Yeah, because actors don't want to have any responsibility, especially me, since I just killed somebody.
Actor's responsibility going this day forward is very different than it was the day before that. Yeah, now I can't. First of all, I can't imagine I'd ever do a movie that had a gun in it again. And I can't. When you say what is the actor's responsibility, the actor's responsibility is to.
He's going to say trust the people who know their job.
Do what the prop armorer tells them to do.
There you go.
And we did not have a problem. I mean, I understand there was an accidental discharge at one point on the set of a.
At one time, it says there were 2 accidental discharges. So you did have a problem.
Have a problem. I mean, I understand there was an accidental discharge at one point on the set of a blank round, but we did not have a problem for me until that day. Everything gets slowed down, Zapruder film-esque here. And the issue with that is there's only one question to be resolved, only one. And that is, where did the live round come from?
Well, he wants that to be the only question. Because that means you're not focusing on me and I can blame somebody else. So right now he's blaming the armory, he's blaming the assistant director that gave him the gun, he's blaming the live round, he's blaming who brought the live round, he's blaming everybody except him. He takes no responsibility. Wow, what a weasel. All right, so that's the interview. I'll slide in my little gun part and a couple of pictures. So after this interview, there's some fallout from the DA and the prosecutor. This is the prosecutor of that county that still hasn't decided to file charges yet. Pretty interesting what she says here.
It's turned over to her.
There's no evidence that this was intentional. This was clearly an accident, but perhaps a criminal accident. Just because something is an accident doesn't mean that a criminal act didn't occur.
And what she's talking about is if you go out and you are speeding and you're going 5 miles over the speed limit, which isn't a big deal, and then you hit somebody and kill them, a death occurred, and had you not been speeding, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Had he checked the gun, this death wouldn't have occurred. Had he followed procedure, this death wouldn't have occurred. had he increased his safety procedures, this death would. He has so much liability exposure. I can't believe he's out here saying this shit.
Alec Baldwin told ABC News he doesn't believe he will be criminally charged. Is he correct to make that statement this early in the investigation?
I would not say that.
We call that a clue. We'll see how this comes out. All right, we'll end that there.